Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today is Tuesday, November 14th, 2023, and I'm Jai Radha Devi Dasi. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 6, Purusha Shukta Confirmed. I'm going to be reading text 17, and then we'll review text 17 through 22. So if you can, please turn to text 17 in your devices. I'll give you some time to do so, and then I'll chant the prayers to our spiritual teachers in the meantime. Om Jnanatimarandasya Janajana Shalakaya Chakshulamitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadatit Swapadantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who is established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees and can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Gadadhar Pandit, Srivas Thakur, and all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I pray that Shri Radha Kalachandji, Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Gurudev use me as an instrument to give, so that their message can flow through me, to give me the words to serve the Vaishnavas listening. So, as I said, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, the Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 6, Purusha Shukta confirmed, Text 17. Please repeat. Swadishnam pratapan prano. Bahishcha pratap pratip asau. Evam virajam pratapam tapati antar pahi puman. Please chant. Swadishnam pratapan prano. Bahishcha pratapati asho. Evam virajam pratapam tapati antar pahi puman. Swadishnam pratapan prano. Bahishcha pratapati asau. Evam virajam pratapam tapati antar bahi puman. Please repeat. Swadishanam, radiation. Pratapan, by expansion. Pranaha, living energy. Bahi, external. Cha, also. Pratapati, illuminated. Asau, the sun. Evam, in the same way. Virajam, the universal form. Pratapan, by expansion of. Tapati, enlivens. Antaha, internally. Bahi, externally. Puman, the Supreme Personality. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The sun illuminates both internally and externally by expanding its radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding His universal form, maintains everything in the creation, both internally and externally. Purport. The universal form of the Lord, or the impersonal feature of the Lord known as Brahma Jyoti, is clearly explained here and compared to the radiation of the sun. The sunshine may expand all over the universe, but the source of the sunshine, namely the sun planet, or the deity known as Surya Narayan, is the basis of such radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the basis of the impersonal Brahma Jyoti radiation, or the impersonal feature of the Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:27. So the universal form of the Lord is the secondary imagination of the impersonal form of the Lord. But the primary form of the Lord is Shyamasundar, with two hands playing on his eternal flute. 25% of the expansive radiation of the Lord is manifested in the spiritual sky, Tripad Vibhuti, and 25% of his personal radiation comprehends the entire expansion of the material universes. This is also explained and stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Thus, the 75% expansion of his radiation is called his internal energy, whereas the 25% expansion is called the external energy of the Lord. The living entities who are residents of the spiritual as well as the material expansions are his marginal energy, the Tatastha Shakti, and they are at liberty to live in either of the energies, external or internal. Those who live within the spiritual expansion of the Lord are called liberated souls, whereas the residents of the external expansion are called the conditioned souls. We can just make an estimate of the number of the residents of the internal expansions in comparison with the number of residents in the external energy, and may easily conclude that the liberated souls are far more numerous than the conditioned souls. So I'll repeat the verse and then read on to verse 22. The sun illuminates both internally and externally by expanding its radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding his universal form, maintains everything in the creation, both internally and externally. Text 18. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the controller of immortality and fearlessness, and he is transcendental to death and the fruit of actions of the material world. O Narada, O Brahmana, it is therefore difficult to measure the glories of the Supreme Person. 19. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be known as the supreme reservoir of all material opulences by the 1/4 of his energy in which all living entities exist. Deathlessness, fearlessness, and freedom from the anxieties of old age and disease exist in the kingdom of God, which is beyond the 3 higher planetary systems and beyond the material coverings. The spiritual world, which consists of 3/4 of the Lord's energy, is situated beyond this material world. It is especially meant for those who will never be reborn. Others who are attached to family life and who do not strictly follow celibacy vows must live within the 3 material worlds. By his energy, the all-pervading personality of Godhead is thus comprehensively the master in the activities of controlling and in devotional service. He is the ultimate master of both nescience and factual knowledge of all situations. Text 22. From that personality of Godhead, all the universal globes and the universal form, with all material elements, qualities, and senses, are generated. Yet he is aloof from such material manifestations like the sun, which is separate from its rays and heat. So we're continuing this conversation between Lord Brahma and Narada Muni, and he's explaining the entire creation to him. And he's come to the part of describing the material versus the spiritual world, and we get a really nice description here. When I was reading this, there's a few things that really kind of struck me, is that the material world is only 25% of Krishna's creation, of God's creation, and the spiritual world is 75%. So, we think, okay, that's, 3 times the size of the material world. And we think the material world is so big, right? We think ourselves so significant. We worry so much about everything that's happening in our house, in our neighborhood, in our community, in our city, in our state, in our country, and then even the world, right? Even planet Earth. And yet planet Earth is just a speck in the entire universe, in the entire material universe, which is speak of the entire creation. And so it helps to put things into perspective about, things that we're going through. If we think about, this is just a speck of creation, and we're living just a speck of the life that we're meant to live, then it helps to put things into perspective. So here they mention a few points that the living entities that are the residents of the spiritual world, they're eternally liberated. And they're eternally part of the spiritual world. And those that are in the material world are considered eternally conditioned and, eternally part of the material world. So when we hear things like that, it can be quite daunting, right? When you hear something like that, what comes to mind for you? You can share. There's a couple of mics there. So just be aware that my class is very interactive. It's not just me speaking. So I do really enjoy to hear your perspectives as well.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, how do I get out?
Yes, exactly. How do we get out, right? And why do we want to get out? Why do you want to get out?
Because, well, I see a lot of suffering around me. I see a lot of suffering within me, or within my body at least. So I don't want the people I love to suffer. I don't want to suffer. I want to be with Krishna. So many reasons we want to get out.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Anyone else have anything to share? Okay, so we do know that we want to not suffer, that we want to be happy. And sometimes we think very, different things will make us happy, will help us from not suffering, right? Like if we didn't grow older, or if our bodies cooperated, maybe I can exercise enough or eat healthy enough, and these things do help, but they're temporary, right? The material body is temporary, and we're trying to keep something that's temporary to be permanent, because we are eternal beings. We know that constitutionally, and so when we're in these bodies, we feel constricted. We feel that there's more. That's one reason why we think everything's going to last forever, is because constitutionally we are eternal. So sometimes when I would hear things like the conditioned souls are eternal and the liberated souls are eternal, I'm like, how do we make that transition if I'm eternally conditioned, and those that are in the material world, spiritual world, are eternally there? Then that means that I'm eternally doomed to be in the material world. So I've heard it said one time that by different people, that we use these words, eternal, and in the material world, our conditioning, it feels eternal because it's thousands and thousands and thousands of lifetimes that we've been, coming back over and over again in different forms, in different ways, different planets. And so it feels eternal. But when we finally decide to, inquire, what's going on? Who are we? What are we meant to do? Where do we come from? And then we start to understand that there is a higher being, and that higher being is Krishna. And we want to know our relationship to him. And we, get on this path of devotional service. And then when we finally make it back to the spiritual world, our time in the material world, even though it was like millions and millions of years, was just like a dream. It was just like a moment of our spiritual existence. And so therefore, it still applies that we are eternally conditioned here, and that when we go back, we're going to be eternally liberated. And then the other thing to understand is that not everybody in the spiritual world comes to the material world. They don't need to go through this process to really understand who Krishna is and who God is, and what their relationship is with them, and what is devotional service. We, somehow or another, became a little envious of Krishna. We thought, why are we serving him? Why can't we enjoy the way he's enjoying? And Krishna, being so merciful, said, of course, I want you to enjoy the way I'm enjoying. But here, everything is meant for my enjoyment. Here is a place that's created, the material world, for your enjoyment, right? And when you're done enjoying and you're ready to come back, he willingly accepts us to come back to him, right? But he also, he's got some bodyguards, we could say, some bouncers at the gate that make sure that we are 100% fully committed to going back. That when we get there, we're going to be 100% fully committed to serving Krishna and doing everything for his enjoyment. And, that's Maya, right? She's the gatekeeper, and she makes sure that when we say, yes, I'm eternally devoted to Krishna and I want to be his servant, that we truly are. Because we're so conditioned, we can say that we want that, but then at the same time we're like, oh, but, I have my family, or I have this, but I still want to travel the world. I want to do this and I want to do that. So as long as we have these kinds of desires that aren't used in Krishna's service, then we get to stay here. So we really are, like you said, looking for this way out, right? And so when we're ready, we, from the famous movie, if you build it, they will come, right? So it's the same way opposite, where like, if we're ready, the teacher will arrive. The spiritual knowledge will come to us, right? So we have Krishna within us, the super soul that guides us when we're ready. He sits there, it said in the Bhagavad Gita, as a silent observer in our hearts. And he's just waiting for us to say, there's got to be something more. This can't be everything. Who is God? What is my relationship to him? And in that moment, we turn towards him, and he's sitting there waiting for that moment. And then he says, oh, yes, here, I'll give you so much information. And, we could happen by a kirtan party while we're out, out and about. I've gone on Harinam, I think recently there was a party that went on Harinam to the Halloween block party that happens in Uptown. And, it's this crazy party that everybody, gets dressed up in costume, and they go and they drink and whatever, and they're out there partying. And we've gone there as, chanting Hare Krishna with a kirtan party. And I often think about, wow, all these souls, they're out here partying, not even thinking about God. And yet Krishna has come in this form of kirtan. And people get so attracted. They come up and they want to join the dancing, or they're very attracted to the sound and the music. And even in their, intoxicated and inebriated state, they're able to relish something in that. And I'm like, oh, this is their, this could be their first contact, or one of many contacts with devotees, spiritual knowledge, all because at one moment in time they thought, who is God? What is my relationship to him? And so Krishna allows all these different venues. And if we think about, what Srila Prabhupada has done, he came around the whole entire world to bring this message out, so that anyone, anywhere, not just in India, but anywhere in the entire planet Earth that has this desire of, who am I? And there's got to be something more, and, is looking for this higher purpose, that they are able to come in contact with devotees, with the book, with so many different things. I've heard so many stories of it wasn't even them that purchased the book, but they were at some place where they found one of Srila Prabhupada's books, or maybe their parents had purchased it and just put it in their library, in their home library, and never thought about it. And the child, as they're older and they're interested in reading, they come upon the book. And sometimes they don't even read the words. There's beautiful illustrations in all of these books, and they look at the pictures and they become so attracted. And I've heard so many great stories like this, that it's not even the devotees that they come in contact with, it's the books that they come in contact with. And so what we do as devotees is so impactful for the people that are looking for answers, how to end this misery in the material world. Sometimes we become a little afraid to share, right? Because, I know maybe it's just me, but there's so many people that push their religion down on everyone else. And it's really difficult to be around those people. because, all they tell you is like everything you're doing is wrong, and you need to like give up all of that and repent, and it's really hard to hear. But if we're acting in such a way that people are like, wow, you seem really peaceful. What's going on? Tell me about what you're doing. Then it's easier to like say, oh, well, you're asking me, therefore I can answer your questions, rather than like, and then some people are really good at this, and I'm not so much good at this, where they can just go up to someone and be like, have you heard about Krishna? Have you heard about God? And, like find some way of connecting with them and doing that. So we all have our different ways in which we can share and impart this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, of the fact that we're just 1/4 of the material existence, and there's so much more out there. There's so much more to what we're experiencing that we can't keep this knowledge to ourselves. We have to share it, and in my experience, the best way to share it is by living by example. I don't know if anyone has any experiences of sharing Krishna consciousness that they want to share in a way that has enlivened both you and the person that you've shared with. I know I've shared in a way that hasn't enlivened the other person. Especially when it comes to family. And when I was first getting enthusiastic, actually I can even say it in the reverse way. Because I was, I've been coming to the temple my whole life. My parents are devotees. And there was a moment in time where I didn't want to come to the temple anymore. And, I made excuses. Oh, I have homework. Can't go on Sunday. We live too far away. And so we stopped coming and only came for like the major festivals. And then after a while, I was still seeking, because I remember during this time, I'd gone to like different churches, and sought out different ideas of religion. And then I was like, I want to go back to the temple. And this was in high school. And so I decided I was going to come back to the temple. And it's really interesting, because I was like walking up and I could hear the kartals. And it was like my heart was beating again for the first time. Like the kartals were like enlivening, right? But still, I wasn't ready to commit. And so then I went off to college. But at the same time, my brothers became extremely involved. And every time I would call home, my brothers would say, oh, are you chanting? Are you reading? Are you doing this? And I was like, stop talking to me about this. I'm not there. If you're going to talk to me about this, I'm hanging up on you, right? And so, we have people that we've done that to, that we got so enthusiastic about sharing and they weren't ready to hear that they can be turned off by it. And then when I finally found my way kind of completely back, it was right after when I met my spiritual teacher, Tamal Krishna Goswami, and that's a whole story for another day. But it was at that moment I was like, okay, yes, I need to, I immediately started chanting again, and even in college I made it a point to continue, and then through med school, same thing. But there was a moment that I was super enthusiastic and telling everyone, and they would be like, oh God, here comes Jayshree. She's going to tell us about Krishna. We got to run away, So you have to find this balance of how you're going to share Krishna consciousness. So does anyone have any stories of sharing enthusiastically where it was enlivening or where it wasn't enlivening? So I'd love to hear it. That's why we have two, right?
Yes. So back in college, I had someone I loved, and then we. I knew that I had feelings for her, but it didn't really work out the way it was supposed to, the way I had envisioned, and like, I think I knew that something was it was going somewhere, and so I retracted, and I was recirculating, and that's when I started reading the Bhagavad Gita, because I knew I wanted my life to be centered around Krishna very subtly. Like growing up, I wasn't very Krishna conscious. There wasn't a lot of bhakti in my life, but I think when I wanted to when I wanted to be with the person that I loved, definitely I wanted both of us to be Krishna conscious. So I started reading the Bhagavad Gita, and then she kind of took it in like a weird way. Like she wasn't really understanding of it. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe she wasn't super understanding of it, or maybe she was. There's just time between us that we need to help understand each other. But I know there have been times where I've spoken to her about this, like we've reached out to each other again, and then for some reason or the other, like I was super enthusiastic, like you said, right? And yeah, I was just super enthusiastic, and perhaps it kind of she was taken aback. She's like, why is he talking to me about this? Like there was no like proper transition. It kind of just jumped straight into the water, and yeah, she stopped texting me. We stopped talking, like never replied ever again. And so it is what it is now. Our friendship is, I believe it's still there, but for now we're not like talking. But there is another group of people, and this is a positive example. There's another group of people, friends that I've had, and they're still currently my friends. I hung out with them yesterday. And they were actually going to, they had done some material activity. I'm not entirely sure, but they were telling me, they were like, oh, like we're gonna go to the Hanuman temple and get protection. And I was like, I was talking to them about it a little bit. And then I was like, because it's Damodar month, and I was telling them, come do the Diya showing. And so they were like a little ambivalent at first. And then something inside of me, maybe Paramatma, maybe some through intelligence or something, Vishnupriya Mataji had actually sent me these pictures of Radha and Krishna, just zooming in one by one. Like it was like 6 different pictures, and just zooming in one by one. And something inside me was just like, send them those pictures and tell them that like, oh, just like, this is the true protection, like Radha and Krishna is true protection. So I just did, and I got immense joy, like transcendental bliss after sending that picture. And they became closer to me, they became more friendly with me, they started opening up to me more. So that was a very nice experience, definitely, that I had. It was more positive experience for sure. And I pray that my relationship with my old friends will also be kindred again. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Anyone else want to share? Please, yes.
I want to reassure you that when Krishna finds your partner, it's everlasting. Before I met my husband, I had 3 visions. And when he finds your partner, you can go through anything. It'll be the right person at a soul level, not a material body level. So just trust in Krishna and you watch. He'll work his miracles and it'll unfold in your life. You should not ever fear when something doesn't go the way you plan.
Thank you. That's really wonderful words of wisdom.
I'll share about the experiences I had with our store. We had a store for 10 years, and sometimes it's really amazing how Krishna works. So we were distributing books, hundreds of books over the decade that we had the store. This store is a convenience store. It's a grocery store. We sell alcohol, cigarettes, and there was also a meat market there. But Krishna saved that store again and again. He protected us from fire at Diwali. He protected us from being robbed. And the person who was going to hold up the store actually spoke to somebody about what they were planning to do. And it was at the time of the festival, the half-man, half-lion form of Nishingadev that weekend. And again, I had a dream, and I saw the employee that would later tell my husband, by the way, please be careful. So he saves you from everything. You just have to trust in him. We could have never known what was being planned, but he made sure that we were protected. And we had a copy of the Srimad Bhagavatam, believe it or not, given to us to keep in the store. A devotee asked us to just store it in the store. And so we had that on site. And one time Krishna even came in my dream, and it was Balaram Jayanti. And he said, okay, the yantras have to be put in the store. There's some yantras, there's some Vaishnava yantras. So in this store where you would never expect the presence of Krishna, he's there. So he's where you expect him to be, and he's where you don't expect him to be.
Exactly.
He's in everything. There's no good and bad. Everything is good because Krishna created even this material creation, even these material bodies, and even things that we perceive to be negative. He created it all. So he's shown his presence to me in, really little ways and then really big ways. And I don't feel worthy or qualified at all. But there are times when I feel like I have to share.
Right.
As, to increase the feeling of he's with all of us.
Yes, we're very compassionate as devotees, right? We say this all the time. The Vaishnava devotees of the Lord are very full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. So we have this enthusiasm because we know we have this amazing solution to birth, death, old age, disease. And yet, we also have to temper that with some of the instructions in the Bhagavad Gita where it says, to not disturb those that are not ready to hear it, or, disturb the peace of those that are, in ignorance in that sense. So sometimes we can, what I can say is play small in Krishna consciousness, because we may have these fears that, if I become too Krishna conscious, I'll lose my friends, I'll lose my family, nobody will be able to relate to me, I won't be able to relate to them. Because I know I've had this fear myself, and sometimes I hold back because of that. And we may have different fears that hold us back, right? Like because we're afraid we won't find our partner if we're too Krishna conscious. And one of the things that I learned is it's actually the opposite. The more Krishna conscious we become, the more our relationships can blossom. Because if we're internally in touch with Krishna and we know that our purpose is to serve him, we rely on him to help us serve him in the best way possible. So if we have this meditation of I'm just on this path and I'm going to do my best to be my best devotee, the best devotional service that I can do, then Krishna helps, give us more strength. And we find that all of our relationships become so much sweeter because we can then the Krishna in us relates to the Krishna in them, right? It's just this, the heart speaks to each other instead of us speaking to them. And like I said, by example is the best way that we can preach. And preaching is the essence. I'm going to end with, some quotes from the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Lord Chaitanya says, distribute this Krishna conscious movement all over the world. Let people eat these fruits and ultimately become free from old age and death. One who has taken birth as a human being should make their life successful and work for the benefit of all other people. It is the duty of every living being to perform welfare activities for the benefit of others with his life, wealth, intelligence, and words. By his work, thoughts, and words, an intelligent man can perform actions which will be beneficial for all living entities in this life and the next. So we're followers of Lord Chaitanya, of Srila Prabhupada, and so he's given us this mission to spread this Krishna consciousness. And there's so many different ways we can do that. But the best way to do that is to become very strong, faithful devotees ourselves. So as we go through our week, I challenge you to share Krishna consciousness with someone, but share it in a very organic way, that it comes up like they're asking you. So it's a tricky challenge, right? How do you do that? Like, one great way to do it, especially during this month of Damodar, is to invite them for dinner at Kalachandji's around 7:30, around 7:45. And then they'll be like, oh, what's going on in the temple room? Because we have these lively, Damodar prayers. And they'll want to come in, and they get so attracted with this, like, offering of a candle because it becomes interactive for them. So, that's a great way to introduce people to Krishna consciousness. Oh, we're just having dinner, but let's meet here and at this place and at this time specifically, right? Enough time to eat, but enough time to also, like, what's going on in that room over there? Can we go in? If people are like, are we allowed to go in? Oh, let me check. It's exclusive. Let's make sure, So, we have to create some sort of, like, interest, curiosity, engagement. So that's my challenge for you and me in this next couple of weeks that we have left of the month of Damodar. Invite someone to have dinner and, have their curiosity piqued. So I'll end here. Zarantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki.